You can sign it now, Evelyn, before you go home and make this harder. That was what Brittany Cole chose to say to me on the day I buried my husband. Not "I'm sorry." Not "Are you okay?" Not even the polite lie people offer when they don't know what to do with grief. Just paperwork. Just property. Just the sound of my name clipped like it was a problem on a checklist. We were still in the funeral home parking lot, the late afternoon sun flattening everything into a pale glare. The air smelled like lilies and warm asphalt. My shoes sank slightly into the edge of the gravel where someone had tried to park too close, and for a moment I couldn't tell if the tremble in my legs was sorrow or anger. I'm Evelyn Parker, 67 years old. I have been someone's wife for 44 years, someone's mother for 40, and someone's mother-in-law for 12. I have cooked enough Sunday dinners to feed a small town. I have folded towels, paid bills, held hands through fevers, listened to worries I couldn't fix. And I have done it all quietly because that's what you do when you believe family is a place you are safe. Brittany stood between me and my car like she owned the space. Her black dress fit like it came with instructions. Her mascara was perfect. Her face was composed in that practiced way some people wear at funerals, as if tears are optional and dignity is a brand. Behind her, my son Ryan hovered with his keys in his hand, eyes darting from her to me and back again, like a man watching a storm decide where to land. Brittany held out a manila envelope, the kind you see in doctors' offices and law firms, thick with papers that smell faintly of toner and impatience. It's straightforward, she said, lowering her voice as if discretion made it kinder. We just need to settle things. The house, the accounts, the insurance. Dad would want it handled. I looked at that envelope and felt something inside me go very still. The way a kitchen goes silent right before a glass hits the floor. My husband's name, Tom Parker, was still fresh in my mind, still aching, still mine, and she was using it like a key. I didn't reach for the papers. I didn't ask what was inside. Just watched her hands. The nails were pale pink. The grip was firm. The smile was small and confident. The smile of someone who thinks grief makes a woman manageable. I let my eyes travel past her to the line of cars, to the guests dispersing, to the last bits of sympathy folding up and driving away. I felt the weight of my purse on my shoulder. I felt the ring on my finger still there, still warm from my skin. Brittany tipped the envelope closer. You don't want to complicate probate, she added, as if the word itself could scare me into obedience. And then she said the part she'd been saving, the part that turned my stomach cold. Ryan and I should be listed as beneficiaries. It's only fair. Only fair. As if love was a receipt. As if years were a technicality. As if my home was already hers, and I was simply late to the handoff. I lifted my chin and met her eyes. I gave her the softest nod, the kind a tired woman gives when she doesn't have the strength to argue. Of course, I said, calm enough to fool her. Let's do it the right way. We left the parking lot with the manila envelope still in Brittany's hand, like she had brought it to the funeral the way other people bring casseroles. Ryan walked beside her, quiet, carrying the look of a man who wanted the day to be over without ever admitting what it had become. I drove home alone, because I needed the space between my steering wheel and my front door to remind myself that I was still a person and not a signature. The sun had dropped low, turning the neighborhood into a row of long shadows and trimmed lawns that suddenly felt too cheerful. When I pulled into my driveway, the porch light was already on. I did not remember turning it on. The key stuck in the lock for half a second, and that half-second made my throat tighten. Inside, the house smelled like flowers that had been left too long in water. Every surface seemed to carry proof that Tom had existed here. His reading glasses on the side table, the mug he always used in the morning, the jacket he refused to throw away because it was still good. I set my purse down with care, as if noise might crack something in me. I took off my shoes and stood barefoot on the hardwood, listening. No television. No footsteps. Only the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the clock Tom used to reset every daylight saving time because I never bothered. I went straight to the kitchen, not because I was hungry, but because hands need something to do when a heart is trying to understand what just happened. I filled the kettle, turned on the burner, and watched the blue flame catch. The simple motion steadied me. Then I opened the drawer where we kept important papers. The drawer slid out too easily. That is what I noticed first. It was not jammed the way it usually was when folders were packed too tight. I ran my fingers along the edge of the file box. The tabs were out of order. Wills and insurance, taxes, property records. Someone had been in here. And not with the clumsy panic of grief. With purpose. I pulled out the folder labeled home and felt my stomach dip. The pocket where Tom kept the updated copy of our deed information was thinner than it should have been. Not empty but lighter, as if 1 or 2 pages were missing. I stood there a long moment, kettle beginning to whistle behind me, the sound rising like a warning I did not want to hear. I turned off the burner, poured hot water into a mug I did not drink from, and carried it to the dining room table where the afternoon sun fell across the wood in bright stripes. That was when I saw it. A faint line in the dust on the edge of the sideboard, like a folder had been slid in and out recently. Tom and I did not slide things. We placed them. Carefully. I walked to the sideboard and opened the cabinet. The old shoebox of keepsakes was there. The set of extra candles. The photo albums. But the small lockbox Tom kept for originals was not in its usual spot. I did not panic. I did not call Ryan. I did not text Brittany. I just stood breathing slowly, letting the quiet settle into a different shape. Grief had made me tender. It had not made me foolish. And whoever thought it had was about to learn the difference. The first thing I did was put the lockbox out of my mind, the way you set a fragile plate back on the shelf before you drop it. If I let fear take over, I would start calling people and people would start lying. I picked up my mug of hot water and carried it to the living room, where Tom's favorite chair sat angled toward the window. The cushion still held the faint impression of him, as if the house had not gotten the memo that he was gone. I sat down slowly and let my eyes move across the room like I was seeing it through new glasses. A framed photo from our 25th anniversary. A throw blanket I had crocheted during a winter when money was tight. A little wooden bowl by the front door where Tom always tossed his keys. It was not just furniture. It was a record of who we were. And Brittany had walked into it with an envelope and a smile. I closed my eyes and let my memory do what it did best. Replay details. This was not the first time she had tried to make me feel like I was in the way. It had started small, the way these things always do, with gestures that look harmless if you only see them once. The first Thanksgiving after Ryan married her, I brought my pecan pie, warm and wrapped in foil, and Brittany met me at the door with that bright hostess voice. She took the pie and said, "Oh, how sweet," then set it on the counter and never served it. Later, when I asked about it, she laughed and said the oven was full and she forgot. Everyone laughed with her, including Ryan, because laughter is easier than noticing. At Christmas, she handed out place cards like a wedding planner. My name was at the end of the table, near the hallway, next to the high chair and the stack of coats. "It is just easier," she said, as if I were a piece of furniture that needed to fit. When I offered to help with dishes, she told me to relax, then sighed loudly when I actually sat down like my rest was an inconvenience. One spring, she started calling me Evelyn instead of Mom, and she said it was because she wanted boundaries. A word that sounded so modern and reasonable that no one dared question it. When Tom was in the hospital last year, Brittany brought Ryan once, stayed 10 minutes, then posted a photo of the hospital bracelet online with a caption about family strength. She never asked me what the doctor said. She never asked Tom how he felt. She asked, quietly, if he had updated his documents. I had brushed it off because I did not want to be suspicious. I wanted peace. But peace, I was learning, can be a rug people pull out from under you. I opened my eyes and stared at the quiet room. The lockbox missing from the cabinet was not a random accident. It was the next step in a pattern I had been too tired, too polite, and too heartbroken to name. I set the mug down and reached for my phone, not to call them, but to do something I should have done a long time ago. Start writing down every detail, while my mind was clear enough to hold the truth. I opened the Notes app on my phone and created a new entry with today's date. Because grief can blur the edges of time, and I refused to let that happen to me. My thumb hovered for a moment, then I typed the first line exactly as it had happened. Brittany brought a manila envelope to the funeral and asked me to sign inheritance papers in the parking lot. I typed it without emotion like a witness statement because that is what it was. Then I added what I remembered next, and the more I wrote, the more a strange calm settled over me. The kind of calm you get when you finally admit the storm is real. I walked back to the dining room sideboard and opened every cabinet slowly, not searching in a frenzy but checking like an accountant. Candle box, photo albums, serving platters. No lockbox. I went upstairs and stood in my bedroom doorway. Tom's cologne still lingered faintly on the collar of his favorite flannel, hanging in the closet like a promise that would not be kept. The nightstand drawer was slightly ajar. That drawer was where I kept my own papers. My passport, my birth certificate, the spare checks I rarely used. I slid it open. Everything looked normal at first glance, but the stack was too neat, too squared. Someone had straightened it after touching it. That was not Tom. Tom left edges uneven, like a man who believed papers were meant to be lived with, not displayed. My stomach tightened again, but I did not let it pull me into panic. I took a breath and looked for what was missing. The folder with my marriage certificate was still there. My passport was there. The checkbook was there. But the small envelope where I kept the card for Tom's attorney was gone. Not the whole folder. Just that envelope, pulled cleanly like someone knew exactly what to take. I sat on the edge of the bed and pressed my palm to the comforter, grounding myself in something soft. Brittany had always been careful. She did not slam doors. She did not throw tantrums in public. She smiled and suggested and nudged, and when people resisted, she did not fight them. She reframed them. She made them look unreasonable. I could hear her voice in my head, sweet as iced tea with too much lemon. Evelyn is just overwhelmed. Evelyn does not understand the paperwork. Evelyn should not have to handle stressful things at her age. It was never a direct insult. It was always a concern. And concern is a convenient mask. I remembered the way she spoke to hospital staff when Tom was admitted, offering answers before I could, stepping slightly in front of me, like she was the translator for my own life. I remembered the way Ryan's shoulders tightened when I questioned anything, as if he had been trained to expect conflict from me, not from her. That was the trick. Brittany did not need to raise her voice. She only needed other people to doubt mine. I looked at my phone again and added another line to my notes. Missing lockbox. Missing attorney card. Drawer disturbed. I underlined the words mentally, not with a pen, because my next move was not going to be emotional. It was going to be precise. If Brittany thought I would crumble into confusion, she had misunderstood the kind of woman you become after 44 years of keeping a household together. I stood up, smoothed my blouse, and went downstairs to the desk where Tom and I kept our calendar and stamps, because if someone was playing a game with documents then, I was going to start by finding the one thing they could not rewrite, the trail. I sat at Tom's little desk, the one we bought at a yard sale and never replaced because it fit perfectly in the corner by the window. The lamp cast a warm circle of light over the blotter, and for a moment I imagined Tom leaning over my shoulder, reading the mail the way he always did, squinting slightly, making a small sound when something irritated him. I opened the top drawer and pulled out our address book, and the stack of old business cards we kept tucked inside a rubber band. There were cards for plumbers, dentists, the HVAC company, even the little bakery that made Tom's favorite cinnamon rolls. But the card I needed, the one that had always been there, was not. That missing card felt louder than any argument, because it told me someone had been planning ahead. I slid open the second drawer and found the calendar where Tom wrote appointments in blocky handwriting. Hospital visits. Prescription refills. Call Frank scribbled twice with a circle around it. Frank was Tom's attorney, the one who handled our will years ago when Tom wanted everything simple and clean. I stared at the words until my eyes stung. Then I reached for the landline, because my hands remembered numbers better than my phone did. I dialed information for Frank's office. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered, and the relief hit me so hard I almost lost my breath. Law Office of Franklin Mercer, the receptionist said, brisk but kind. I swallowed. This is Evelyn Parker, I said. I need to confirm something. Did my husband call recently about any changes to our documents? There was a pause, the soft sound of typing. Mrs. Parker, I am so sorry for your loss, she said, and her tone shifted into something careful. Mr. Parker did call, yes. He requested an appointment. My fingers tightened around the receiver. When? I asked. Last week, she said. He spoke briefly with Mr. Mercer and scheduled a meeting for Monday, but he canceled that morning. We were going to follow up. Last week. Tom had been tired last week. Tom had been in and out of sleep, but he was still sharp about money and still protective of me. He had not canceled appointments unless something serious happened. Did anyone else call about our records? I asked, keeping my voice even, as if I was asking about a bill. Another pause. We had a call, she admitted. A woman. She said she was helping the family with arrangements. She asked whether there was an updated will on file. I closed my eyes. I did not need to ask her name. I could see Brittany's smile as clearly as if she was standing in my kitchen. And what did you tell her? I asked. We do not release information, the receptionist said quickly. We told her only that Mr. Mercer would speak directly with you as the spouse. My heart beat once heavy. Brittany had been fishing. Maybe she had not caught anything at the office, so she came to my house. Or maybe she had tried both just to be safe. I thanked the receptionist and asked for an appointment with Mr. Mercer as soon as possible. When I hung up, the house felt different. Not haunted. Watched. I opened my phone notes and typed. Frank Mercer confirms. Tom's scheduled appointment last week. Brittany called office asking about updated will. Then I added one more line because it mattered most. Brittany is moving fast. Which meant I had to move smarter. By the time I finished writing that last line, the sky outside had turned the color of old dishwater, and the first porch light on our street clicked on with a small, indifferent glow. I made myself walk through the house and lock every door, even the one off the garage that Tom used to forget. I checked each window latch the way I used to check on Ryan when he was small, not because I expected danger, but because the act of checking reminded me I still had control over something. Then I set my phone face down on the desk and stood there, listening to the quiet settle again. Grief wants you to curl inward. Brittany was counting on that. She wanted me soft, slow, and grateful for any help. The truth was I had spent decades managing a home on one income when Tom's hours got cut, balancing checkbooks, stretching groceries, and keeping calm when the furnace died in February. I knew what pressure felt like. I also knew when someone was applying it on purpose. At 7:30 my phone buzzed. I did not have to look to know who it was. Brittany never waited long once she decided something was hers. I picked up the phone and watched it ring until the last second, then answered in the gentlest voice I could manage. Hello, I said, as if I had been dozing. Evelyn, Brittany said, and she did not bother with sympathy. We should meet tomorrow. The papers are ready. Ryan can bring them by. I let a small pause hang, just enough to make her think I was overwhelmed. Tomorrow, I repeated softly, like the word was heavy. Yes, she said, sharper now. There are deadlines. It is better to do it quickly. You do not want the court involved. Court. Probate. Fees. She knew which words sounded scary to someone she had decided was fragile. I pictured her at her kitchen counter, phone tucked to her ear, nails tapping, eyes flicking to Ryan for backup. I pictured Ryan's face the way it looked lately when he spoke to me, like he was bracing for disappointment. Brittany, I said, and I put a tiny tremble in my voice, not too much, just enough to feed her assumptions. I do not think I can handle all of this right now. Her tone softened instantly, not with kindness but with opportunity. That is why we are helping, she said. Just sign. We will take care of the rest. You can rest. Rest. Like my life was a recliner. Like my marriage was a folder to be filed away. I took a slow breath and chose my words the way you choose the right size lid for a pot, careful, exact. I want to do it the right way, I said. Not in a rush. Not in my kitchen. If it is about Tom's wishes, then we should meet with his attorney. Silence. A thin, sharp silence that told me I had stepped on something important. That is not necessary, Brittany said quickly. It is just paperwork. Then it will be easy at the attorney's office, I replied, still gentle. We can all be there. You, Ryan, and me. No confusion. She exhaled, a sound that tried to be patience and failed. Fine, she said at last. We will do it your way. But do not make this difficult, Evelyn. I almost laughed, but I did not. I let my voice stay small. I will try, I said. When the call ended, my hands were steady. Because now I knew something for sure. Brittany did not want witnesses. And if she did not want witnesses, then witnesses were exactly what I was going to bring. After I hung up, I did not rush to bed the way Brittany probably assumed I would. I moved through the house with the quiet purpose of someone who has finally stopped hoping things will work out on their own. I went to the pantry first and pulled out a legal pad I use for grocery lists, because sometimes the best planning starts on plain paper. At the top I wrote 3 words, what I know. Under it I listed every fact, not every feeling. Brittany brought papers to the funeral. The lockbox is missing. The attorney card is missing. Brittany called Frank Mercer's office last week, asking about an updated will. Brittany wanted signatures at my kitchen table, and did not want witnesses. When I looked at those facts lined up, neat and cold, the story wrote itself. This was not about helping me. It was about beating me to the finish line while I was still stumbling in grief. I set my phone beside the legal pad and turned on the voice memo app. Not to record my sorrow, but to record my memory while it was fresh. I spoke the details out loud slowly like I was reading a report. Times, dates, exact phrases. You can sign it now. It is only fair. You do not want probate. The words sounded uglier when they were not wrapped in Brittany's polite tone. Then I opened my email and searched for anything from Frank Mercer's office. There it was, an old confirmation from years ago, when Tom and I updated our will after Ryan got married. Attached was a scanned letterhead with the office address and direct phone line. Brittany could steal the card from my drawer, but she could not erase my inbox. I forwarded the email to myself with a new subject line. Do not lose. Next, I checked the joint bank account app. I did not see anything missing, but I did see something that made my jaw tighten. An attempted password reset notification from 2 nights ago. It was marked as unsuccessful. Someone had tried. Someone had failed. Someone would try again. I took screenshots of the notification and saved them in a folder labeled Tom on my phone, then backed them up to my email. Felt strange treating my life like evidence, but stranger still was realizing how much I needed to. In the hallway closet, I found the small fireproof pouch Tom bought after a neighbor had a kitchen fire. Inside were copies, not originals, of key documents Tom insisted on keeping safe. Our marriage certificate copy, a copy of the deed, a list of account numbers written in his handwriting. The originals belonged in the lockbox, but copies were still power. I sat at the dining table and compared the copy of the deed to the thinner folder I had found earlier. The dates matched. The names matched. Tom and I. No one else. My chest loosened by a fraction. Brittany could scheme, but she could not rewrite what had already been filed. I looked at the clock. It was past 9. Tomorrow would come fast. I wrote one more line on my legal pad under what I know. She is counting on me being quiet. Then I wrote a second header bolder, what I will do. And for the first time since Tom died, I felt something other than emptiness fill my lungs. Not rage. Not panic. Just resolve, steady as a heartbeat. In the morning I woke before my alarm, not because I was rested, but because my mind had already lined up the day like dishes on a drying rack. The house was quiet in that early way that makes grief feel sharper, like the world is holding its breath. I made coffee I barely tasted, then sat at the dining table with my legal pad and my phone, and I wrote down a simple plan. Keep everything in writing, keep my voice calm, and give Brittany enough rope to show exactly what she was trying to do. At 8:15, I emailed Frank Mercer's office using the address I found in my inbox. I kept it short and plain the way Tom would have. I am Evelyn Parker, spouse of Thomas Parker. I need an urgent appointment regarding estate documents. Please confirm the earliest time today or tomorrow. Within 20 minutes, the receptionist replied with a time slot that same afternoon. 2:45. My hands did not shake when I read it. I forwarded the confirmation to myself again and saved a screenshot. Then I did something Brittany would not expect from a grieving widow. I started setting boundaries in writing. I texted Ryan, not Brittany, because Ryan still believed he was the reasonable one. I wrote, I have an appointment with Frank Mercer at 2:45. If you and Brittany want to discuss anything related to Tom's documents, we will do it there. Please confirm you will attend. No accusations. No emotion. Just a date and time. Ryan replied an hour later, okay. Brittany says that is fine. Seeing Brittany's name in that message felt like a hand inside my son's mouth, moving his words for him. I did not respond to that part. I only wrote thank you. Bring any papers you have. Then I prepared for the meeting the way I used to prepare for parent-teacher conferences when Ryan was little. Organized, polite, and quietly unshakable. I printed the email thread from Frank's office. I printed screenshots of the password reset attempt. I gathered my copies from the fireproof pouch and placed them in a simple folder. I did not bring the thinner home folder. I did not bring anything Brittany could snatch and claim was hers. Instead, I brought copies and facts because copies can be replaced and facts cannot be argued away when a professional is watching. Around noon Brittany called. I let it go to voicemail. She texted immediately afterward. Do not forget your identification. They will ask. I stared at the message and pictured her rehearsing control. I waited 10 minutes then replied thank you. I will see you there. Nothing more. That was the trap, gentle and quiet. Every time I answered without panic, she lost a little power. At 2:15 I locked my house, checked the porch light timer, and slipped the folder into my tote bag. I paused by the front door where Tom's wooden bowl still sat, empty now, and I felt the ache rise again, heavy and personal. I whispered I have got this, though I did not know who I was speaking to, Tom or myself. Then I drove to Frank Mercer's office with the radio off, my hand steady at 10 and 2, and the calm certainty that whatever Brittany brought to that room, I was not coming in as her target. I was coming in as Tom's wife and as the woman who had finally decided to stop being moved around like furniture. Frank Mercer's office smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and paper, the kind of place where people speak softer without being asked. The receptionist greeted me with the same careful kindness she had used on the phone, and that alone made my chest tighten, because it reminded me how few people had been kind to me in the last 24 hours. I was seated in a small conference room with a bowl of mints on the table when Brittany swept in first, heels clicking like she wanted the room to know she had arrived. Ryan followed, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes tired, jaw clenched the way it always got when he was trying not to choose sides. Brittany carried her own folder, thicker than mine, the corners crisp, her posture bright with confidence. We are all here, she said, smiling at Frank as if she had been invited to run the meeting. Frank Mercer entered a moment later, silver hair neatly combed, glasses low on his nose, and he shook my hand like I mattered. Mrs. Parker, he said, steady and professional. Then his gaze moved to Brittany. And you are? Brittany Cole, she said quickly, holding out her hand. Ryan's wife. I have been helping Evelyn through all of this. The word helping landed like a polished stone. Frank sat, opened a file and looked at me. Before we begin, he said, I want to confirm something. There has been no updated will executed by Thomas Parker. Brittany's smile held for half a second too long. He was going to, she said smoothly. He talked about changes. He wanted to make sure Ryan was protected. Frank nodded once then turned a page. Mr. Parker scheduled an appointment, he said. But he canceled. No changes were made. Under state law, absent a new executed document, the existing will and beneficiary designations control. I slid my folder forward, calm. I also received a notification of an attempted password reset on our joint account, I said. And your office told me someone called last week asking about an updated will. Brittany's eyes flicked just once toward Ryan. It was small, but I saw it because once you stop trying to be liked, you start seeing clearly. Frank's expression did not change, but his voice tightened by a degree. Yes, he said. My receptionist documented that call. Brittany lifted her chin. I was just trying to understand the process, she said, a little sharper now. Evelyn is overwhelmed. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I simply looked at Ryan, not accusing, just steady. Your father trusted me, I said. And I trusted both of you. I am not doing anything in a parking lot. I am not signing anything I did not review with counsel. Ryan's face reddened, and for the first time, his eyes held mine without darting away. Mom, he started then stopped, because Frank had opened the folder and laid out the truth like clean linens. The home is deeded to Thomas and Evelyn Parker, Frank said, tapping the paper. Mrs. Parker remains in her home. There is no provision that removes her. Any attempt to pressure signatures outside proper review would be unwise. Brittany's mouth opened, then closed. Her fingers tightened around her folder, and I realized her entire plan depended on me being embarrassed, isolated, and silent. Instead, she was the one sitting under a bright office light with nowhere to hide. Frank looked at me. Mrs. Parker, he said, I recommend changing account passwords immediately and considering a safe deposit box for originals. As for the missing lockbox, we can document that today. I nodded. We will, I said. Then I stood, smoothed the front of my sweater, and picked up my tote. Brittany looked up at me, searching my face for anger she could use, for tears she could dismiss. I gave her neither. I only said quietly, Tom built this life with me. You do not get to claim it as a prize. In the hallway, Ryan followed me out. His voice was small, the way it used to be when he scraped his knee and tried to act brave. I did not know, he said. I thought she was helping. I looked at my son, really looked, and saw how tired he was, how tangled he had become. Then start helping now, I said, not cruel, just honest. By telling the truth. He swallowed and nodded once. Outside, the afternoon sun was warm on my face. I sat in my car for a moment before turning the key, letting the quiet settle into something different than grief. Not emptiness. Not rage. Something steadier. The kind of peace that comes when you finally stop begging to be treated like family, and you simply take your place as the woman who kept the whole story together.